Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Oscar Rose. Trevor here. I'm joined by Thomas. We got more Sundance. And today we are talking about a debut feature from Andrew and Sam Zucchero called Love Me. It was very anticipated going into the festival. I don't think it was what anybody was really expecting.
No, God no.
But starring Kristen Stewart and Stephen Yeun. And before we get into the film, they're both really good.
They are. They are good, and they give good voice performances as well.
And good physical performances.
And yeah, no, obviously I was, taking the physical performances for granted almost with, actors of the caliber of Kristen's doing.
Sure.
But like the voice performances as well are actually very good. They're actually very good.
Like if critics groups do like their like best vocal performance award, like give it to them. They're great.
Yeah, I'd go and see it.
So the performances are good.
Other
And the
than that,
performances are good.
yeah, there's definitely problems with
Having mentioned the performances are good.
with the film. There's a lot of problems with it.
Yeah.
It feels,
where should we start?
Yeah. I don't know. Like let's start with, I guess, just the overall concept for this.
Yeah.
It
Minor
felt for me,
spoilers, I guess, for conceptually what it's doing.
yeah, it felt for me very straight out of film school in a derogatory way. In the fact that it was very conceptual and it
Yes.
seemed very pleased with itself for coming up with this tricky sci-fi, I guess you'd describe it, concept.
It felt like a short film expanded.
Exactly. It feels like there was nowhere near enough ideas to sustain a feature-length film, whilst also exploring way too many stuff. It felt very vague and it felt very broad. And I think in a film like this, when there's stuff that you could go to and places you could go and directions you could take the story, it just doesn't do them, and it does something else. And I don't think what it does is very interesting, unfortunately.
So,
and I think it's kind of grating and it's kind of annoying.
It's a love story that's basically just all talking. First
Yes.
animated and then live action. And it is after humanity's extinction, it's a buoy and a satellite who basically they connect through the internet and they fall in love and discover the internet. Now, conceptually, two non-human things like falling in love through the like basically like before sunrise, but like post-apocalyptic and on the internet with Christopher and Stephen Yeun. Sure.
Really? You
I
think
think
that initial concept?
I think in the hands of a different filmmaker, like I think somebody could make something really interesting with this. I think that like taking
Maybe with the very foundational concept of it.
right, because like you could have explored like how abstracted our identities have gotten through the internet and how communicating through the internet is different with people and how you could never reach that. The problem is that this film just kind of wanted to ignore that, and it just kind of got to the point of like, but it can actually be the same and you should want to be the same in all like, the communicate, and it just kind of forgets that it's about the internet and
it forgot what every chapter, because it's split up into like 3 chapters.
I think
every chapter felt very distinct from one another and not in a good way.
It felt like it forgot what the last one was about.
Exactly. It felt like they were 3 different short films almost.
And each of those short films could have been good. The problem is that none of them
the second one was annoying.
anything. None
Chapter
of them
2 was annoying to me. Chapter 2 was really quite
Chapter 2 was annoying. Okay, the first and third chapters
agreed with that.
Could have been good short films.
They could have been, but they don't work in cohesion with one another when I think it's trying to do that, especially when you're telling a romance film like this and you're trying to develop a connection with the lead and with the central romance.
And to go back to
you never achieve that. And that is a key problem with this film, is that it's establishing a romance film where you never feel anything to romance inside.
No, and the thing is like, I don't know. I think it does land a few emotional beats towards the end. Like, I think that there are some, like, I think that from a structural perspective, it doesn't make sense at all, like, structurally, logically, like, really thematically to points. But, like, it does kind of work emotionally. Like, it still does things, even though, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I'm not, entirely even sure if I agree with that.
I feel like it does land a bit. Like it at least like it gets somewhere, but the path to get there was way too convoluted, and I think it lost itself multiple times. But it gets somewhere in the end that I wasn't completely upset with, and that's where I feel like it could have been an interesting film. Like if you take the first initial concept and where it got by the end, I think as a beginning point and ending point for this entire, like, decade spanning whatever journey, like if you change, like if you took a different path on the journey to get there, then I feel like it could have worked and been interesting. But I feel like the path to get there was way too like twisty and turny and abstract to like actually make the beginning and end even link in any meaningful capacity.
Yeah, no, I definitely I would agree with what you're saying there. I do think that I just for me it didn't arrive at anywhere impactful because I didn't think the journey warranted it ever. Therefore, I
Yeah.
don't know if I can
Okay.
entirely agree with that point. But like yeah, it lacks emotion. It lacks connection of any sort. It
Right.
feels
But
like
it wants you to
but
feel.
it wants you to feel it,
Yeah.
and that's where the real juxtaposition comes from this wanting you to feel it, but not doing anything or taking the right steps because it is doing stuff. Like it is, it's a very distinctive film.
I
Like I'll
won't be
give it
forgetting it.
exactly, I'll give it the credit for that. It is a distinctive, memorable experience, but
Mhm.
it's a wholly unsatisfying for one for me. Just in the overall execution of what it's trying to do, a lot of the screenplay felt quite meandering. It felt like it was
Mhm.
touching on points and then moving away and then
And
returning
it has
back
its
and not
moments, and I
very
think those moments are elevated by Stewart and Yeun.
exactly. I think they're the reason, they're the draw of the film. It
Mhm.
feels like this is, yeah, as I say, a film fresh out of film school that
Yeah.
somehow managed to land
Stewart and Yeun.
excellent lead performances.
Right.
Yeah, but
'Cause
which
there's
overall doesn't make a film work. It doesn't make a film
yeah.
tick. I never was bought on like I think Stewart gives an excellent performance in a vacuum. I think
Mhm.
Yeun gives an excellent performance in a vacuum. Do they work together? Not for me. No.
I would like to see them in another film together.
Exactly. Yeah. No, for sure.
Because
100%.
I do think there's, like, an excellent scene and, like, visually, it's quite interesting as well. Like, not the 2nd chapter. 2nd chapter was
No, second chapter's not. And this is the problem. Hot
right.
like a good 2/3 what how long was the second chapter was long. The second chapter
Yeah.
really dragged on.
It was, like, 20
Um
minutes and then 40 minutes and then, like, 30 minutes for the final one.
Yeah, roughly. It was the longest section and it was the least
Yeah.
interesting section, and
Yeah.
it just fell flat on a lot of
It's
what it was
really
doing. The
repetitive.
animation aspects
Yeah.
were awful. Like, I get it. I get why they're in the style that they are, but for 40 minutes,
It wasn't
really,
appealing.
you couldn't have done something slightly more visually interesting.
And
And so, yeah.
but, like, the first 20 minutes, the animation that it's very visually interesting. The live action bit I found, like, really visually interesting. Like, I kinda loved, like, the production design and what it was doing. I don't understand why Stephen Yeun was, like, looking for water. That was weird.
I
But
liked it, but I don't know if it's only because I liked it because of what preceded it made me go, "Oh, that's at least something."
maybe.
I don't know if it
Like,
completely
there's the
works.
sequence,
Yeah.
like, a a sequence where they, like, are, going through, like, all these different things, and the first thing that we see, like, other people, like, in the house in, like that entire sequence, I think, is, like, actually well directed and, like,
Mm.
well put together, and it's, like, it builds, like, the tension and the emotion and everything really well, uh, in a vacuum, but then the release of it just it doesn't work, it doesn't make sense, and then the actual ending, if you've seen the film, I don't understand what that's supposed to be, and if I'm interpreting it how I think it's supposed to be interpreted, it's really annoying. The,
Yeah.
like, very, very ending sequence, if you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. Like, if that is what I think it is supposed to be and how the story is supposed to be
I think
framed,
the story
it's really insulting.
tries to be so ambiguous and so, like, just sort of
Yeah,
existing in the that it fails to land at any thesis. It fails
right.
to land at any point,
And,
and
like,
a lot of
I'm
it just felt pointless. A lot of this film felt
mhm,
like it was doing stuff that I haven't really seen before, but there's
mhm.
possibly a reason I haven't seen
Well,
this
like, and I love abstraction. I'm gonna bring up something like koinaskatsi, right? That's, like, all just, like, abstract images and just showing, different things, and, like, but that doesn't try to tell you how to feel and think about the things. Like, if you're going
this
to
does.
be
Yeah.
abstract and, like, if you're gonna be abstract, you should give people the space to feel the abstraction and explore the abstraction. Whereas this is going for all of these abstract ideas while also trying to force and tell you exactly how to feel about those abstract ideas.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't work
Yeah.
because then it's just kind of annoying.
And this
But
is, I think, where the sort of smug element comes from, where it feels like the person behind it was really just pleased with themselves. Because a lot of the themes, a lot of the ideas just seem forced on you. Like you're forced to think about these
yeah,
things in a certain way. When I think inherent to the story, there's a lot of ambiguity there. There's a lot of
right. And
interesting
that's the
directions you could
beauty.
have
I
gone down.
think that it's almost
Yeah.
scared to be ambiguous, whereas I think some of the most beautiful films ever are because they are like films can be beautiful when they rest in the spaces in between, right? And those
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
rest in the ideas in between extremes and in between, love and hate and all these types of things. And it allows itself to breathe in those ideas. And that's where it can find its inner turmoil and conflict. Whereas this feels so uncomfortable resting in those spaces in between. And it always feels like it wants to be something, which also feels so inherently contradictory to the actual theme and messaging of the film.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if it's the fact that it wants to be something or the fact that it thinks it is something. I
Yeah.
think there is a voice behind the
Either
film.
way, it feels very contradictory to like what the whole film was about.
Yeah,
But
exactly. I think there is a voice behind this film that really becomes apparent throughout, and it really grows more grating and grating as the film progresses. That it's just like it's telling you what to think. It's telling you everything. It with performances from Kristen Stewart and Stephen Yeun, you can allow for subtlety because they will bring that through in the performance. I don't think the film ever allowed them to
yeah,
really excel
it
at
never.
where them specifically as actors really excel, like we saw Stephen Yeun in Minari. I think that is a very subtle
Stewart and
performance. Kristen Stewart
Spencer.
in Spencer, exactly. They're very subtle performances that are given room to breathe. This film never allows for that.
Yeah,
So you've got very capable actors, very talented actors, but
and
they're
it
not
doesn't use them.
working at their best.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
it doesn't use them quite right.
yeah, for sure. All this to say, like, I don't despise. Like, I respect the swing. Like, I
Yeah, it's a
gotta respect
swing.
the swing.
It's a swing, and it's a very
Like,
Sundance type film where I'm glad I was able to watch it and know that this was a bad idea and we shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff.
right, but
But
like, I'm also glad that this person got this film made.
exactly,
Like, I'm
it
glad.
feels
I'm
like someone's passionate behind it.
Right. And, like, it's interesting, it's creative, like, I'm happy that we're seeing films made that, like, aren't just the same things that we've seen before and retreading same things and the same type of, like, blockbuster type
Yeah,
sci-fi stuff. Like, it's interesting. I do think that this person had, this I believe it's a couple who directed it, like, they have a voice, they have, an interesting, lens that they view cinema through, that I would like them I would watch another film from them,
yeah, no,
to be
for
clear.
sure.
Like, I would be curious to see what they make next
I'd be
because, like,
curious. Yeah,
it isn't like they aren't, they aren't dull filmmakers. Like, they obviously have things to say and they're willing to say it in interesting ways, which is, I think, like, those are the best types of filmmakers that have really interesting things to say and aren't always going to say them in the most obvious and conventional ways. Did this entirely work or land? No, but, like, these are the types of films that should be made. They just should be, better.
and
But
I'm glad it was able to be made on such a scale where it allowed for us to get Kristen Stewart and Stephen Yeun. I think with any other
yeah,
performances in these key roles, oh my god, this would have been a car crash of a
yeah,
film.
for sure.
As it stands, it's a misguided attempt, but I appreciate the fact
I
that it's
appreciate
an
the attempt. I
attempt.
appreciate the attempt. Yeah.
Exactly, I appreciate it more than I can call it a good film. I wouldn't recommend
Yeah.
it. I don't think it's. I think it falls apart really, springboarding off its fundamental foundations. Like
Yeah.
immediate, like the concept, interesting. Everything that is built on that concept doesn't work fundamentally and doesn't come together and doesn't create this cohesive sort of decade, as you say, spanning love
Yeah.
story that I think it
And
wants
not
to
even
create.
decade, it's like, what's supposed to be
I
like
don't know.
million
Yeah.
years? I don't know.
Yeah.
It
Whatever.
loses itself somewhere there.
It does.
But all that to say, I'm gonna give it a 5.
I'm gonna be harsher.
Mm.
I really didn't find much in this film other than like I respect the ambition. That was the
Yeah.
only sort of positive thoughts I came out. So I'll be giving it a 3 probably. I think this
That
was
makes
the
sense,
worst of the festival fairly comfortably. Like we spoke about Handling the Undead earlier. I didn't like that film very much. I didn't really take to it. I do think that is a pretty significant step up from this. So
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I would obviously agree, but, like, I don't know. I as a member of the directors, the fellow director, I can appreciate the swing. I can
for
appreciate the
sure,
swing.
for sure.
I like seeing people try things at least.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'll never be too incredibly harsh when, maybe that's just the standards. Maybe the bar's on the floor now with a lot of cinema, but I appreciate
Mm,
people try. Appreciate people try.
yeah.
Anyways, those are our thoughts on Love Me. And yeah, we'll have more Sundance reviews that you can watch that will be out throughout the week because we watched lots of things. But until then, thank you everybody for watching. Stay safe and goodbye.